Hey there, nature lovers! Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of the wedge-tailed eagle, one of the largest and most iconic birds of prey in Australia. First, let's talk about the long story and history of this majestic creature. The wedge-tailed eagle is a species of bird that has been around for over 20 million years, making it one of the oldest and most well-adapted birds in the world. Moving on to taxonomy, the wedge-tailed eagle is a member of the Accipitridae family, which includes other birds of prey like hawks, eagles, and kites. Its scientific name is Aquila audax, and it's the only species in its genus. Now, let's talk about the wedge-tailed eagle's description. It's a large bird with a wingspan of up to 2.4 meters, and it's one of the heaviest birds of prey in the world. It's mostly brown, with a white head, and it has a distinctive wedge-shaped tail. Moving on to its range and habitat, the wedge-tailed eagle is found throughout Australia, with the exception of the driest parts of the country. It prefers open forests and woodlands, and it's often seen soaring high above the landscape. Next, let's talk about its behavior. The wedge-tailed eagle is a powerful flyer, and it's known for its graceful soaring and impressive aerial displays. It's a skilled hunter, and it feeds on a variety of prey, including mammals, birds, and reptiles. Now, let's discuss its dietary biology. The wedge-tailed eagle is a carnivore, and it feeds on a variety of prey, including mammals, birds, and reptiles. It's a skilled hunter, and it's often seen soaring high above the landscape in search of prey. Moving on to breeding, the wedge-tailed eagle is a monogamous species, and it breeds in pairs. It nests in trees, and it's known for its impressive aerial displays during courtship. Finally, let's talk about its conservation status. The wedge-tailed eagle is listed as a species of least concern by the IUCN, but it's still important to protect this magnificent bird and its habitat. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of the wedge-tailed eagle. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to follow and subscribe for more fascinating wildlife stories. The wedge-tailed eagle Aquila audax, also known as the eaglehawk, is the largest bird of prey in the continent of Australia. It is also found in southern New Guinea to the north and is distributed as far south as the state of Tasmania. Adults of this species have long, broad wings, fully feathered legs, an unmistakable wedge-shaped tail, an elongated upper mandible, a strong beak, and powerful feet. 4. The wedge-tailed eagle is one of 12 species of large, predominantly dark-colored booted eagles in the genus Aquila found worldwide. Genetic research has clearly indicated that the wedge-tailed eagle is fairly closely related to other, generally large members of the Aquila genus. 5. A large brown to black bird of prey. It has a maximum reported wingspan of 2.84 meters, 9 feet for an, and a length of up to 1.06 meters, 3 feet 6 in. 6. The wedge-tailed eagle is one of its native continent's most generalized birds of. They reside in most habitats present in Australia, ranging from desert and semi-desert to plains to mountainous areas to forest, even sometimes tropical rainforests. Preferred habitats, however, tend towards those that have a fairly varied topography, including rocky areas, some open terrain, and native woodlots, such as eucalyptus stands. 7. 8. The wedge-tailed eagle is one of the world's most powerful avian predators. 8. Although a true generalist, which hunts a wide range of prey, including birds, reptiles, and, rarely, other taxa, the species is, by and large, a mammal predator. 8. 9. The introduction of the European rabbit, Oryctolagus cuniculus, has been a boon to the wedge-tailed eagle, and they hunt these and other invasive species in large volume. Although the wedge-tailed eagle otherwise generally lives off of marsupials, including many surprisingly large macropods. Additionally, wedge-tailed eagles often eat carrion, especially while young. 7. 8. 10. The species tends to pair for several years, possibly mating for life. 8. Wedge-tailed eagles usually construct a large stick nest in an ample tree, normally the largest in a stand, and typically lay 2 eggs, although sometimes 1 to 4. 7 usually. Breeding efforts manage to produce 1 or 2 fledglings which, after a few months more, tend to disperse wide. Nesting failures are usually attributable to human interference, such as logging activity and other alterations, which both degrade habitats and cause disturbances. The species is known to be highly sensitive to human disturbance at the nest, which may lead to abandonment of the young. 11. Although historically heavily persecuted by humans through poisoning and shooting, mostly for alleged predation on sheep, wedge-tailed eagles have proved to be exceptionally resilient, and their numbers have quickly rebounded to being similar or even higher numbers than before. European colonization, thanks in part to humans inadvertently providing several food sources, such as rabbits and a large volume of roadkill. 1712. The species was first described in 1801 by the English ornithologist John Latham under the binomial name vulture audax. 13. At one time, the wedge-tailed eagle was classified in its own monotypical genus Evreux, perhaps due to its unique form. 6. Today, the genus vulture is used only for a completely unrelated bird of the New World vulture family, the Andean condor vulture gryphus. 14. The specific scientific name for the species, audax, is derived from the Latin audax, meaning bold, indicative of their perceived disposition, perhaps when hunting, although the species is, in general, highly wary and even timid around humans. 8. However, the species is quite similar in many aspects of its morphology, appearance, behavior, and life history to other species in the Aquila genus. 6. 10. 15. The eagles of the Aquila genus are part of the subfamily Aquilinae, within the larger Accipitridae family. The subfamily is commonly referred to as booted eagles or sometimes as true eagles. Those species may be distinguished from most other accipitrids by the feathering covering their legs, regardless of distribution. With some 39 or so species, the Aquilinae is present on every continent except Antarctica. 14. 15. By a variety of phylogenetic testing, largely via mitochondrial DNA and nuclear DNA genes, it has been determined that the wedge-tailed eagle clusters with certain other Aquila eagles. The species found to share the most genetic similarities is the Vero's eagle Aquila veroi of Africa. However, the Guernsey's eagle Aquila guernsey, a mostly allopatric but outwardly fairly similar eagle, is clearly a very close relation of the wedge-tailed eagle, and the two are likely sister species, most probably originating from the same radiation across the Indo-Pacific region. 5, 7, 8, 16. The wedge-tailed, Guernsey's, and Vero's eagles form a clade, or a species complex, with the well-known golden eagle Aquila crissetos, the most widely distributed species in the entire accipitrid family, as well as outwardly dissimilar smaller and paler-bellied, yet also powerful, eagles like the Bonelli's eagle Aquila fasciata, the African hawk eagle Aquila spilagaster, and the Cassin's hawk eagle Aquila africanus, the latter three having once been considered members of a different genus. Beyond the aforementioned species, based on genetic testing, the four other Aquila species, although outwardly similar to golden and wedge-tailed eagles, being large, dark, and brownish, with long wings, are thought to form a separate clade, and are paraphyletic from the members of what can be called the golden eagle clade. 5, 7, 16, 17 other related outliers from outside the Aquila genus are the small to mid-sized clonga, or spotted eagle species, and the widely found and quite small Hyretus eagles. One member of the latter genus contains the only other widely found Aquilinae eagle in Australia, the little eagle Hyretus morphnoides. 5, 16, 17. Subspecies forest ravens in Tasmania to subspecies of wedge-tailed eagle are recognized. 18. However, the separation of the two subspecies has been called into question, largely because the reported differences in both size and coloration can be attributed to clinal variation. and some of the insular populations may still be at an intermediate stage of subspecific formation. 7, 8, 19, this subspecies resides in the entire continent of Australia as well as in southern New Guinea. It is the typical wedge-tailed eagle as subsequently described. This race is endemic to Tasmania. The subspecies is named in honor of David Fleay, an Australian naturalist who was the first to propose the difference of the insular race. Fleay differs from mainland wedge-tailed eagles mainly via size and coloring. For it is larger than the mainland eagle and is said to have particularly outsized talon dimensions compared to mainland eagles. 20. Furthermore, it has a deep chocolate brown overall color rather than blackish, with a whitish buff coloring to the nape rather than tawny-rufous feathers there. For 8. The juvenile is altogether paler and sandier than an equivalent-aged wedge-tailed eagle on mainland Australia. 8, 9. Although the validity of the subspecies has been questioned, genetic studies have determined that there is no gene flow or introgression between Tasmanian and other wedge-tailed eagles. Furthermore, the insular race was likely formed by marine dispersals, a process wedge-tailed eagles may continue to engage in despite usually avoiding large bodies of water, albeit usually in narrower straits. 1921. Description: wedge-tailed eagles are very large and quite lanky birds. They are characteristically black, but can appear tar to charcoal brown, depending on lighting and individual variation. 9. They have a massive bill, but possess a relatively small and rather flat head, with a long, almost vulturine neck. Furthermore, they are distinctive for their prominent carpals and baggy feathered trousers. 4. The species tends to perch conspicuously on dead trees, telegraph poles, rocks, or, at times, the open ground. Between the bill size, elongated shape, and prominent shoulders, the species is highly distinctive. While perched, their long wings extend down to a long and markedly wedge-tipped tail. For 9, they have a large proportion of bare facial skin, which is thought to be an adaptation to the warm climate rather than carrion eating, because the non-carrion-eating Evreux eagle has similar facial feathering, and the golden eagle eats carrion too. 8. Against the blackish plumage, the tawny-rufous hackles on the neck, forming a lanceolated shape, as well as the pale brown to rufous crissum and narrow mottled gray-brown band across the greater wing coverts, all stand out well. For 10, the sexes are indistinguishable by plumage. 4. The juvenile is mainly darkish brown, with extensive rufous feather edging and a paler, fairly streaky head. Furthermore, the juvenile has a lighter brown crissum and a light reddish brown to golden nape, with similar coloring extending sometimes to the back and wing band. The wing band is considerably more prominent than those of adults, extending to the median and sometimes the lesser coverts. Rarely, a juvenile may be all dull black, lacking rufous edges or a wing band. For 7, young eagles are much the same by the 2nd through to the 4th years, though they may be almost invariably visibly in molt and with a narrowing wing band. They become darker around the 5th year, with a red-brown nape and a still narrowing wing band. Full mature plumage is not attained until the 7th or 8th year, although sexual maturity can be considered as early as 5. For 7, adults have dark brown eyes, while juveniles usually have similar but slightly darker eyes. Wedge-tailed eagles are typically creamy white on the cirri and feet, although those can be dull yellow, more so in juveniles than adults. 4. The wedge-tailed eagle has a unique molt process in that they molt almost continuously and very slowly, and it might take 3 or more years for an eagle of the species to complete a molt. Molts are arrested only at times of famine and happen gradually, so that they do not impede the bird's flight or hunting capacities. 822. In flight, wedge-tailed eagles appear as a very large, dark raptor with a protruding head, long and relatively narrow-looking wings, more or less parallel-edged when soaring and, most distinctly, Along the shape is dissimilar to any other raptor in the world. For 23, juveniles tend to be broader wing by comparison. The wingspan is around to 0.2 times greater than the bird's total length. 4. They tend to fly with rather loose but deep and powerful beats. Wedge-tailed eagles spend much time sailing along, looking quite stable and controlled even in strong winds. The species glides and soars on upswept wings with long splayed primaries. The ample tail may be upcurved or dished at the edges. For 24, the eagle often spreads its deep wing emarginations to reduce drag in high winds. 822. Contrary to their superlative and controlled appearance once on the wing, flight for wedge-tailed eagles can be a struggle even in normal circumstances, unless it is from a pinnacle or it is somewhat windy and, within the forest, they may clamber about, with a lack of grace, to reach the canopy. 8 gorged birds on the ground can be vulnerable, being practically grounded, which was an advantage historically to Aboriginal hunters. 8. Human gliders have encountered wedge-tailed eagles at more than 3,000 meters, 9,800 feet. 8. The adult is all blackish on the wing, but for the tawny-rufous nape and grayish wing band running less than a quarter of the way down the wing's width. Little relieves the dark coloration below, but the pale brown to rufous crissum and the pale grayish bases to their flight feathers. For 7, juvenile wedge-tailed eagles appear much browner, although in general are not dissimilar in pattern below though the body and wings relative to adult. However, juveniles may show some paler mottling of an off-rufous color. Meanwhile, the juvenile's tail and most flight feathers are barred grayish, which in turn contrast against the pale-based primaries with black tips. Above, the juvenile bears much paler and more sandy rufous color from the head to at least upper mantle, and a long broad wing band, as well as more than half the wing width. The lighter dorsal color sometimes extends too much of the back and scapulars. Rare individual juvenile eagles are dull black, without a wing band or paler edges. With much variation in individuals, generally as the young eagles age, the signature wing band shrinks incrementally and, after the 5th year, the plumage darkens. For 23.7. Size, the female wedge-tailed eagle is one of the world's largest eagles. 25, its nearest rival in Australia for size, is some 15% smaller linearly and 25% lighter in weight. 8. As is typical in birds of prey, the female is larger than the male, although a few individual females are larger by only a small amount. They average up to 33% larger. For a full-grown female weighs between 3.0 and 5.8 kilograms, 6.6 and 12.8 pounds, while the smaller males weigh 2 kilograms for 8.8 pounds. 7.6. Total length varies between 81 and 106 centimeters, 32 and 42 in, and the wingspan typically is between 182 and 230 centimeters, 6 feet 0 in and 7 feet 7. In 1930, the average weight and wingspans of 43 birds were 3.4 kilograms, 7.5 pounds, and 200 for 0.3 centimeters, 6 feet 8 in. 1026, the same average figures for a survey of 126 eagles in 1932 were 3.63 kilograms, 8.0 pounds, and 226 centimeters. 7. According to one guide, the mean body mass of male wedge-tailed eagles is to 0.5 kilograms, 5.5 pounds, while that of females is listed as for 0.7 kilograms, 10 pounds, which, if accurate, is one of the most extreme examples of size sexual dimorphism known in any bird of prey. 28-29. However, another sample showed far less stark size differences, with 29 males weighing an average of 3.13 kilograms, 6.9 pounds, and 29 females an average of 3.8 kilograms, 8.4 pounds. In the same sample from the Nullarbor Plain, males averaged wingspan of 193 centimeters, 6 feet for an sample of 26, and body length of 85.2 centimeters, 33.5 in sample 5, while females had an average wingspan of 209 c, 1,006 feet 10 in sample 23, and body length of 90 to 0.1 centimeter. However, the nullarbor plain eagles appear slightly smaller than wedge-tailed eagle sizes from other surveys based on body mass and wing chord sizes. 931-32. An average length for males of 91 centimeters 36 in and 100 centimeters 39 in was described for wedge-tailed eagles in Queensland. 33. Another source claimed an average male weight of 3.2 kilograms, 7.1 pounds, and average female body mass of 4.3 kilograms, 9.5 pounds 8. Yet another book lists males as averaging to 0.95 kilograms, 6.5 pounds, and females as averaging 3.97 kilograms, 8.8 pounds. 24. A sample of 10 males averaged 3.14 kilograms, 6.9 pounds, while 19 females weighed 4.18 kilograms, 9.2 pounds. 22-32. The mean body mass of males in Tasmania was 3.5 kilograms, 7.7 pounds, while that for females was 4.1 kilograms, 9.0 pounds. 7. The largest wingspan ever verified for an eagle. A female killed in Tasmania in 1931 had a wingspan of 284 centimeters, 9 feet for an, and another female measured barely smaller at 279 centimeters, 9 feet to an. 27 similar claims, however, have been made for the stellar sea eagle Haliaeetus pelagicus, which has been said to reach or exceed 274 centimeters 9 feet 0 in wingspan. Reported claims of wedge-tailed eagles spanning 312 centimeters 10 feet 3 in and 340 centimeters 11 feet 2 in were unverified and deemed to be unreliable per Guinness World Records. 27. This eagle's great length and wingspan place it among the largest eagles in the world, but its wings, at more than 65 centimeters 26 in, and tail, at up to 45 centimeters 18 in, are unusually elongated for its body weight, and 9 or 10 other eagle species regularly outweigh it. 4. It is around the third heaviest aquila species, outsized only somewhat by the golden eagle and slightly by the Vero's eagle, although it only slightly exceeds the weight of the Spanish imperial eagle Aquila ad Alberti, 8/3 among the entire booted eagle subfamily. In addition to the two heavier Aquila, it is outsized in bulk by the martial eagle Polometus bellicosus, while the also long-tailed crowned eagle Stephanoides coronatus can average of a roughly similar body mass to the wedge-tailed eagle, although the latter is marginally the heavier bird. 830 for 20 to the wedge-tailed is exceeded in body mass by only a few eagles, especially the stellar sea eagle and harpy eagle Harpia harpia, and somewhat by the Philippine eagle Pithecophagua jeffer, the white-tailed eagle Haliaeetus albicilla, and the bald eagle Haliaeetus leucocephalus. 30 for 25. However, it rivals the stellars and harpy eagles and is known to be exceeded only by the Philippine eagle in total length. The wedge-tailed eagle's wingspan is the largest of any aquila and is exceeded amongst all eagles probably only by the white-tailed and stellar sea eagles in average spread, though its average not maximum wingspan is rivaled by that of the martial eagle. 27, 25, 36, 37. Among standard measurements within the nominate subspecies, the wing chord of males may range from 553 to 667 millimeters, 21.8 to 26.3 in, while that of the female is from 600 to 703 millimeters, 23.6 to 27.7 in. For captive specimen at Symbio Wildlife Park, New South Wales, note the massive pale bill and cirri. In Tasmania, the wing chord measured from 594 to 664 millimeters, 23.4 to 26.1 in males, and 620 to 711 millimeters, 24.4 to 28.0 in nullarbor plain. Males averaged 587 millimeters, 23.1 in in wing chord, while females average 638 millimeters, 25.1 in. 31 other Australian wedge-tailed eagles average 611 millimeters, 24.1 in wing chord among males, and 650 millimeters, 26 in among females. 32 in Tasmania, the wing chord averaged 618.8 millimeters, 24.36 in males, and 661.3 millimeters, 26.04 in females. The extreme tail length, slightly to greatly exceeding that of other aquila, is in males from 352 to 479 millimeters, 13.9 to 18.9 in, averaging 370 millimeters 15 in the nullarbor eagles, and 421.2 millimeters 16.58 in Tasmania, and from 376 to 536 millimeters 14.8 to 21.1 in, averaging 410 millimeters 16 in nullarbor, and 448.9 millimeters 17.67, although they only slightly exceed in tail length the heavier to aquila and crowned eagles, and they can rival the tail lengths of the Philippine and the Harpine eagles. Tasmanian wedge-tailed eagles are quite likely to be the longest-tailed of all modern eagles. For 2031, the length of the tarsus may be from 99 to 139.9 millimeters, 3.90 to 5.51. The tarsus of 7 males averaged 100 for 0.3 millimeters for 0.11 in, while that of 7 females averaged 111.1 millimeters for 0.37 in. 22. In terms of bill measurements, the exposed culmen may range from 37.5 to 61.6 millimeters 1.48 to 2.43 in males, and 46.3 to 65.1 millimeters 1.822 to 0.56 in females, while total bill length from the gate is from 55 to 67 millimeters to 0.2 to 2.6 in, and 58.2 to 73 millimeters to 0.29 to 2.87 in this. It is likely to be the largest billed aquila, a bit ahead of the imperial eagles and the Evreux eagle, behind only the larger Haliaeetus and Philippine eagles amongst all eagles. 2031-32. In Tasmania, culmen lengths averaged 48.4 millimeters, 1.91 in males, and 51.4 millimeters to 0.02 in females, while the total length of the bill averaged 59.4 millimeters to 0.34 in, and 63.2 millimeters to 0.49 in. 20. The hallux claw, the enlarged rear talon on the hind toe, is slightly smaller than that of a golden or Evreux eagle, even proportionately, but is extremely sharp. According to one study, wedge-tailed eagles had a hallux claw of 38.9 millimeters, 1.53 in, ranging from 38.1 to 41 millimeters, 1.50 to 1.61 in males, 40 for 0.7 millimeters, 1.76 in, ranging from 40.6 to 48.1 millimeters, 1.60 to 1.89 in a sample. Another source listed the hallux claw of mainland Australian eagles as averaging 41 millimeters, 1.6 in males, and 46 millimeters, 1.8 in females. 8. Meanwhile, in Tasmanian eagles, the hallux claw averaged 45.2 millimeters, 1.78 in, ranging from 38.6 to 48.8 millimeters, 1.52 to 1.92 in males, while in females, the hallux claw averaged 49.9 millimeters, 1.96 in, ranging from 45.5 to 55.6 millimeters, 1.7. In terms of osteological structure and size, the wedge-tailed eagle is said to be proportional to other eagles, being notably smaller and less robust than the heaviest eagles, such as stellars and harpies, but fairly similar in osteology, in both structure and proportions, to the golden eagle. 38. A profile view of a wedge-tailed eagle at Captain's Flat. The species is the largest Australian bird of prey and one of the largest eagles in the world. Identification: a juvenile in the Northern Territory, notable for paler areas on the wing coverts and nape as well as for a browner overall hue. Their unique combination of large size, lanky build, long, diamond-shaped tail, though can be round-ended when both central feathers are molted together, mainly black or rather dark plumage, and long wings seen when soaring or gliding make all ages of the wedge-tailed eagle fairly unmistakable in the majority of their range. For 9. The only main confusion species is often the black-breasted kite Hamarostra melanosternin, which is surprisingly similar in coloring, but is much smaller with a relatively short, squared tail and extensive clear white windows covering a good part of their wings. For 7 juveniles of the white-bellied sea eagle Haliaeetus leucogaster, at times mentioned as potentially confusable with a young wedge-tailed eagle, are much paler below with a rather different flight pattern, a short pale tail, bare legs, shorter, broader wings held in stiff dihedral. For 8, in New Guinea, the Guernsey eagle is more similar than those species in form and build, but the Guernsey is somewhat smaller and more compact than the wedge-tailed eagle with rich yellow feet, a rather shorter rounded or faintly wedge-tipped tail, shorter and relatively broader wings in adaptation to more forest living. Furthermore, the Guernsey eagle has a much paler immature plumage. For 39, although usually considered an island endemic, the Guernsey eagle is possibly capable of marine dispersals, as is the wedge-tailed eagle. That may lead to them to turn up in the forests of northern Australia, and historical reports show that a rare vagrant of the species may indeed appear there at 840. The Papuan eagle Harpiopsis novaeguinea, the only other island raptor in New Guinea that approaches the wedge-tailed in size, is a highly distinct and forest-restricted species, being much paler, particularly below, with long, bare legs and different proportions, more like a giant accipiter with short rounded wings, a long, somewhat rounded tip tail, and a large, rounded head. For 39, the Northern Territory, abbreviated as NT, known formally as the Northern Territory of Australia 8 and informally as the Territory A9, is an Australian internal territory in the central and central northern regions of Australia. The Northern Territory shares its borders with Western Australia to the west, 129th meridian east, South Australia to the south 26th parallel south, and Queensland to the east 138th meridian east. To the north, the Northern Territory looks out to the Timor Sea, the Evreux Sea, and the Gulf of Carpentaria, including western New Guinea and various other islands of the Indonesian archipelago. The NT covers 1,347,791 square kilometers, 520,385 square miles, 10, making it the 3rd largest Australian federal division, and the 11th largest country subdivision in the world. It is sparsely populated, with a population of only 249,003 as of December 2021, fewer than half as many people as in Tasmania. 3. The largest population center is the capital city of Darwin, adding about 52.6% of the territory's population. The largest inland settlement is Alice Springs, with a population of about 25,000 people. The archaeological history of the Northern Territory may have begun more than 60,000 years ago, when humans first settled this region of the Sal continent. From at least the 18th century, Macassan traders began a relationship with the indigenous people of the Northern Territory around the trading of Trepang. The coast of the territory was first seen by Europeans in the 17th century. 11. The British were the first Europeans to attempt to settle the coastal regions. After 3 failed attempts to establish a settlement 1824 to 1828, 1838 to 1849, and 1864 to 1866, success was achieved in 1869 with the establishment of a settlement at Port Darwin. The economy is based largely on mining and petroleum, which during 2018 to 2019 contributed 23% of the gross state product, or $5.68 billion, accounting for 90% of exports. 1213, the territory's population is concentrated in coastal regions and along the Stewart Highway. Besides the capital of Darwin, the major settlements are in order of size: Palmerston, Alice Springs, Catherine, Newlanby, and Tennant Creek. Residents of the Northern Territory are often known as Territorians. 14. Vocalizations. Wedge-tailed eagles are not well known for its vocalization, nor are they often heard. For 10, they may be silent for long stretches of time, possibly months, at least outside of breeding season. 4. When vocalizations have been documented, it usually only near the nest and in aerial display, and can be hard to hear unless at close range. 4. The commonest calls for wedge-tailed eagles are high, rather thin whistles, sometimes transcribed as I see, followed by a short descending cedia. For 7, 10 also documented during the breeding season are various other whistles, yelps and squeals, and an often rolling series. Characteristically, all their calls are surprisingly weak, though the main call is sometimes considered to have a melancholy quality. For 10, the opinion on their call is not dissimilar to the golden eagle, whose voice is similarly considered unimpressive. 1041, female calls in wedge-tailed eagles are similar but are generally lower and harsher than males. 4. Range and habitat of wedge-tailed eagles seen over well-wooded environments around Kurgunya. Wedge-tailed eagles are found throughout Australia, including Tasmania, as well as southern New Guinea, in almost all habitats, though they tend to be more common in favorable habitat in southern and eastern Australia. 8. In Australia, they may be found almost all the way from the Cape York Peninsula in the north down to Wilson's Promontory National Park and Great Otway National Parks in the southern tips of the continent. And from Shark Bay in the western side of the continent to Great Sandy National Park and Byron Bay. In the east, 17. They are widespread throughout the desert interior of Australia, but are rare in low densities in the most arid parts of the continent, such as the Lake Eyre Basin. 42. Offshore, the wedge-tailed eagle may be distributed in several of the larger Australian islands and some of the smaller ones. Those include a majority of the Torres Strait Islands, Albany Island, Pippon Island, the Isles of Bathurst Bay, many small isles in Queensland, from Knight Island down to the South Cumberland Islands, Fraser Island, Moreton Island, North Stradbroke Island, Montague Island, Kangaroo Island, the Knights Archipelago, Groot Island, and the Tiwi Islands. 1543-40 for 4546 excessive citations. In Tasmania, they may be found essentially throughout, as well as some isles of the Kent Group, Bass Strait, Flinders Island, and Cape Barren Island. 47, 48, 49. In New Guinea, the wedge-tailed eagle is highly range-restricted and can be found predominantly in the Transfly savanna and grasslands and the general area around the western province, as well as in Indonesia-Maroc Regency, with some isolated reports in western New Guinea, the Bensbach River, and the Oriomo River. 1550-51 habitat. Wedge-tailed eagles favor varied environments, mostly those with some leafy trees and rocky areas, but can be seen in a great variety of habitats. The wedge-tailed eagle lives in an extremely wide range of habitats. For 15, although range is restricted relative to the golden eagle, it likely occupies a wider range of habitat types than likely any other aquila eagle, and may outrival any booted eagle species in their use of diverse habitats, being somewhat more akin to habitat generalist raptors, such as buteo buzzards. 850-53. Assorted habitats known to host wedge-tailed eagles includes open woodland, savanna, heathland, grasslands, desert edge and semi-desert, subalpine forests, montane grasslands, and mountain peaks, not to dense tropical rainforests, monsoon forests, dwarf conifer forests, some wetlands, as well as regularly forays to coastal areas. Though normally along the coasts, they occur around plains somewhat away from the water. For 7, 8, 9, 15 excessive citations. Favored habitat tends to be remote or rough country, at least partially wooded and not uncommonly varied with some rocky spots as well as in shrubland. Wedge-tailed eagles seem to prefer some dead trees to be present. 7-8, 6-15, they may occur around eucalyptus woodland quite regularly, as well as acacia woodland and mixed woodlands of Casuarina cristateflin dirge maculosa calitris, cypresses, and also stands of Casuarina cunninghamiana. 750 for 55-56. A strong preference was detected for C. cunninghamiana, alternatively with several eucalyptus species, was detected in the Australian Capital Territory. Sloping ground allowing good access and access to tall, mature trees being paramount to the eagles in the study. 57, quite often they will be seen soaring over hills, mountains, or escarpments as well as over flat plains, especially spinnex grassland. 6-15. Dense forest is typically avoided with glades and edge often sought out in forested areas. While they do occur in rich riparian woodlands, it is with relative scarcity, despite this being where many other raptors of the nation concentrate. 7-6, 58-59. In the deserts of the Lake Eyre Basin, they are often seen in gibber plains along treed watercourses and drainage basins, here often concentrated around eucalyptus in stony creek beds. 760. In the sandy desert areas of Western Australia, wedge-tailed eagles were once reasonably common, but have largely vacated the region after the macropod prey they live off of there were all but hunted to extinction. 61. Wedge-tailed eagles commonly occur from sea level up to about 2,000 meters, 6,600 feet, with seemingly no preference based on altitudinal level. 4. A fairly pronounced liking for mountainous localities, such as plateaus, has been detected in a few studies of wedge-tailed eagle. 58-62. One of the few habitat types considered to be strongly avoided by wedge-tailed eagles are areas intensively settled or cultivated areas. For 920, for a slightly fading tendency to avoid human areas has been detected, perhaps as persecution rates have gone far down, and the wedge-tailed eagle may be seen near towns and villages in exurban and even suburban areas, largely within bushland. However, the species is seldom seen other than as a flyover in more developed towns and cities. 7-8. Additionally, it is not uncommon to see these eagles in man-made spots such as pasture areas, forestry clearings, and rolling farmland areas. 8. Behavior taking off from its perch. The long legs of this adult female are clearly visible. This impressive bird of prey spends much of the day perching in trees, on rocks, as well as similar exposed lookout sites, such as cliffs from which it has a good view of its surroundings. Alternatively, they may sit on the ground for long periods of time or watch from a lower point, such as on termite mounds or ant hills. 4. Now and then, it takes off from its perch to fly low over its territory. 8. Especially whilst not breeding, wedge-tailed eagles spends a considerable amount of the day on the wing. For 8, wedge-tailed eagles are highly aerial, soaring for hours on end without wing beat and seemingly without effort, regularly reaching 1,800 meters, 5,900 feet, and sometimes considerably higher. The purpose of soaring has received little specific study in wedge-tailed eagles, but it is likely, as in other accipitrids, in large part for surveying the territory and advertising their presence to other eagles. 53-63. During the intense heat of the middle part of the day, it often soars high in the air, circling up on the thermal currents that rise from the ground below. 8. Often when on the wing, it is scarcely visible to the human's naked eye, for their keen eyesight extends into ultraviolet bands. With a visual perception some 3 times more acute than those of humans, one of the largest pecten oculi of any bird, and an eye roughly as big as a small human's. They may be one of the most sharp-eyed birds in the world. 860 for 65. The wedge-tailed eagle is largely sedentary as expected of a raptor dwelling in the subtropics, although they also dwell in the tropics, far northern Australia and New Guinea, as well as in the temperate zone Tasmania. For 10, however, juveniles of the species can be quite dispersive. In some cases, they have moved to a recorded distance of some 836 to 868 kilometers, 519 to 539 miles. These extreme movements have been completed within 7 to 8 months after dispersal. 8-9 more typically they move no farther than 200 kilometers, 120 miles or so. 24. The adult eagles can also be nomadic, though only in circumstances such as drought conditions. In turn, this explains the species' presence in places they don't breed, even adults. For 8-9, in addition to moving for drought and arid zone, also moves in highest part of New South Wales, e.g. the Snowy Mountains. The species often apparently vacates snow-covered alpine zone in winter. 66. The small New Guinea population is apparently indistinguishable from the mainland race and so possibly result of recent colonization, although no records exist of migrating wedge-tailed eagles islands past the Torres Straits. 4. However, it can be projected from its presence in various offshore islands its capacity for crossing straits ranging up to as far as 50 to 100 kilometers, 31 to 62 miles apart. 8. One post-dispersal young eagle was observed to distribute from Kangaroo Island to the mainland, possibly a regular occurrence. 67 due to their tendency for wandering. Some authors class the wedge-tailed eagles as a partial or eruptive migrant. However, while they are arguably eruptive, it does not fit the mold of a true migrant, well, since under normal circumstances adults are rather sedentary, unless environmental changes force them to move. 1568. The wedge-tailed eagle is the only bird that has a reputation for not infrequently attacking hang gliders and paragliders, although other eagles, including the golden eagle, have also been recorded to behave thusly. Based on the response the eagles show to the gliders, they presumably are defending their territory and treating the perceived intruder like another eagle. Cases are recorded of the birds damaging the fabric of these gliders with their talons, as well as some other parts of the gliding apparatus, but not the humans themselves, has been reported. 869. They have also been reported to attack and destroy unmanned aerial vehicles used for mining survey operations in Australia. 70. The presence of a wedge-tailed eagle often causes panic among smaller birds and, as a result, aggressive species such as magpies, one of the most vulnerable types of passerini to eagle attacks. B. Butcherbirds, wagtails, monarch flycatchers, lapwings, and miners, as well as smaller birds of prey, including both accipitrids and falcons, any of which may aggressively mob eagles. See video. Multiple species may join the kerfuffle and mob them, especially while the eagles perch, often engaging in noisy calling, presumably meant to disorient the predator, and occasionally in physical attacks against the eagle, typically focused where the big, relatively lumbering eagles could not grasp the attacking birds. The wedge-tailed eagle usually does not engage its tormentors, but sometimes rolls in the air to present talons, whether perched or not. 871. 72. Sometimes wedge-tailed eagles appear to fight, but this and other behaviors, especially between young eagles, may be interpreted as playful. 8-9. Some such behaviors have included fetching sticks tossed by others, athletic flipping between juvenile eagles, and even playing games with dogs, via floating above them until the dogs bark or leap, then floating up until the dog settles, and then repeating the games. 8. Flocking behavior has been noted, similar to that of vultures, Cathartidae, and Accipitridae in other countries, when carrion is available. 73. Dietary biology. A wedge-tailed eagle standing on roadkill carcass of kangaroo in the Pilbara region of Western Australia cannibalizing a wedge-tailed eagle roadkill, killed when itself was feeding on a kangaroo roadkill. The wedge-tailed eagle is one of the world's most powerful avian predators. 7-8. Due to its formidable and dominating nature, it is sometimes nicknamed king of birds, along with golden eagles. 74. Prey is usually grabbed via pounce or snatch during a gliding flight or a tail chase from low quartering or transect flights. For 759.75, prey is not infrequently spotted from a soaring flight, and they may undertake a long, slanting stoop towards it. 10. They may be able to spot prey from farther than a kilometer, given their keen vision. 8. Its typical hunting style is not altogether dissimilar from that of golden or Evreux eagles. 53. Occasionally, a wedge-tailed eagle still hunts from a perch. 4. Unsuccessful hunts typically exceed in number successful ones. 10. Hunting habitat can be highly variably and can manage to capture prey in both open country and quite thick woodland or forest, though typically require an open understory in the latter. 10. Almost all its prey is taken on the ground, but to a lesser extent it may be taken from the tree canopy. 4. They've been known to take birds such as currawongs and cockatoos by coming around them by surprise or on a tree, or by darting out in flight at close range for a brief tail chase. 8. 76. Sometimes an eagle may pull brush-tailed possums and other mammals from tree cavities, as well as young birds from a nest. For 77.78. They've been known to follow wildfires to search for fleeing animals, or alternately tractors and other farm equipment for the same purpose. 8. Wedge-tailed eagles occasionally pirate food from other predators. For 8. An eagle of the species can carry prey of at least 5 kilograms 11 pounds. For 7. Large animals may be attacked by pairs or, occasionally, by groups acting cooperatively. One record shows 15 wedge-tailed eagles hunting kangaroos to actively chasing at a time, then repeatedly being replaced by 2 more from the circling group overhead. For 8. 79.80. Regardless of prey size and season, tandem hunts, mainly by breeding adult pairs or sometimes loosely associated young eagles, are not uncommon. 79 of 89 observed hunts in Central Australia, around 1/3 were cooperative ones. 7. As in other tandem hunting raptors, one eagle typically lies in wait generally unseen, while the other eagle distracts and drives the prey towards it. 781. When hunting domesticated prey, they've been seen to land near livestock mothers to intimidate them and separate their young, so they can attack the latter. 7. Sometimes, wedge-tailed eagles may use fences to limit a prey's escape routes. 7. In some cases, these eagles will attempt to force large prey, such as kangaroos and dingoes, to fall off steep hillsides and injure themselves. 8. At times, wedge-tailed eagles appear to hunt at earliest light or late twilight in order to come upon nocturnal prey such as hare wallaby and bettongs. 8. These eagles have been seen removing rabbits from traps and eating carrion in bright moonlight as well. 8. At times, remarkably, wedge-tailed eagles have been covering large prey with vegetation, apparently to cache food too heavy to carry. 82. Carrion is a major diet item. Also, wedge-tails can spot the activity of ravens around a carcass from a great distance and glide down to appropriate it. Carrion consumption is recorded in all season and contexts, although generally non-breeding birds are more likely to scavenge, and young wedge-tailed eagles, even more so shortly post-dispersal, are thought to be far more likely to scavenge on carrion than adults generally. Wedge-tailed eagles are often seen by the roadside in rural Australia, feeding on animals that have been killed in collisions with vehicles. The importance of carrion relative to live prey has not been greatly studied, but away from human development, especially roads, carrion is less likely to be encountered, and eagles of all ages must presumably hunt to survive. In general, Australian accipitrids of many species not infrequently come to carrion, and they, along with large passerines like corvus species and currawongs, probably fulfill the niche that vultures do eye, and other continents to some extent, albeit with considerably less specialization. For 7, 8, 9 aggregations of wedge-tailed eagles may occur not infrequently at large carcasses, with up to 5 to 12 eagles, or sometimes 20 gathering. 4. A wedge-tailed eagle can gorge up to 1 to 1.5 kilograms to 0.2 to 3.3 pounds at a sitting, and, when fulfilled, can last for an unusual amount of time, for up to weeks, or even a month, before needing to hunt again, apparently due to the warmth of the environment. 7. After feeding, they may disgorge a relatively small pellet, 29 to 98 millimeters, 1.1 to 3.9 in long by 20 to 50 millimeters, 0.79 to 1.97 in wide, and weighing some 8.8 grams, 0.31 ounces. Usually the diet is determined from a combination of reviewing these pellets along with loose prey remains. 83. The grouping is paraphyletic, as some lizards are more closely related to snakes than they are to other lizards. Lizards range in size from chameleons and geckos a few centimeters long to the 3-meter-long Komodo dragon. Some lineages known as legless lizards have secondarily lost their legs and have long snake-like bodies. Some lizards, such as the forest-dwelling Draco, are able to glide. They are often territorial, the males fighting off other males and signaling, often with bright colors, to attract mates and to intimidate rivals. Lizards are mainly carnivorous, often being sit and wait predators. Many smaller species eat insects, while the Komodo eats mammals as big as water buffalo. Lizards make use of a variety of antipredator adaptations, including venom, camouflage, reflex bleeding, and the ability to sacrifice and regrow their tails. Such wild rabbit populations are a serious mammalian pest and invasive species in Australia, causing millions of dollars worth of damage to crops. Their spread may have been enhanced through the emergence of strong crossbreeds. Conventional methods include shooting rabbits and destroying their warrens, but these had only limited success. From 1901 to 1907, a rabbit-proof fence was built in Western Australia in an unsuccessful attempt to contain the rabbits. 3. The myxoma virus, which causes myxomatosis, was introduced into the rabbit population in the 1950s and had the effect of severely reducing the rabbit population. However, the survivors have since adapted and partially recovered their previous numbers. Domesticated rabbits are banned as pets in the state of Queensland. For kangaroos are marsupials from the family Macropodidae, macropods, meaning large foot. In common use, the term is used to describe the largest species from this family, the red kangaroo, as well as the Antilopine kangaroo, eastern gray kangaroo, and western gray kangaroo. 1. Kangaroos are indigenous to Australia and New Guinea. The Australian government estimates that 40 to 0.8 million kangaroos lived within the commercial harvest areas of Australia in 2019, down from 53.2 million in 2013. 2. As with the terms wallaroo and wallaby, kangaroo refers to a paraphyletic grouping of species. All three terms refer to members of the same taxonomic family, Macropodidae, and are distinguished according to size. The largest species in the family are called kangaroos, and the smallest are generally called wallabies. The term wallaroos refers to species of an intermediate size. 3. There are also the tree kangaroos, another type of macropod, which inhabit the tropical rainforests of New Guinea, far northeastern Queensland, and some of the islands in the region. This kind of kangaroo lives in the upper branches of trees. 4. A general idea of the relative size of these informal terms could be the gala, cacla, Eolophus rosicapilla, less commonly known as the pink and gray cockatoo or rose-breasted cockatoo. 2 is an Australian species of cockatoo and the only member of the genus Eolophus. The gala is adapted to a wide variety of modified and unmodified habitats and is one of Australia's most abundant and widespread bird species. 3 for 5. The species is endemic to mainland Australia. It was introduced to Tasmania. The wedge-tailed eagle is a dietary generalist, opportunistically capturing a wide range of prey species. 7-9. Its prey spectrum is quite broad, with well over 200 prey species documented to be taken, and even this includes very few prey only from secondary accounts from Tasmania and New Guinea. 7, 8, 9, 84. The wedge-tailed eagles tends to prefer smallish to fairly large mammals as prey. For 7. However, they not infrequently take ample numbers of both birds and reptiles, along with scarcely other prey taxon. 7, 9, 84 out of 21 accrued dietary studies. 61.3% of prey items by number in the foods during nesting efforts were mammals, 21.6% were birds, 13.2% were reptiles, to 0.1% by invertebrates, principally insects, 1.5% by fish, and almost no amphibians by number. 7. Meanwhile, out of the 21, 13 studies calculated estimated biomass and found that just shy of 90% of prey biomass was made up by mammals, 6.2% by birds, and 3.4% by reptiles. 7 out of the Aquila genus, it is one of a few generalist species. However, the wedge-tailed eagle is the Aquila most likely to typically attack the largest prey. 53 generally, this species prefers to attack birds and reptiles weighing over 100 grams 3.5 ounces and mammals weighing over 500 grams 1.1 pounds. Although prey taken at times has varied from a few grams to more than 16, a comparison estimate posited that around 2% of wedge-tailed eagle prey weighs less than 63 grams to 0.2 ounces. Per percent of their prey weighs 63 to 125 grams to 0.22 for 0.4 ounces. 7% of their prey weighs 125 to 250 grams for 0.4 to 8.8 ounces. 10% weighs 250 to 500 grams 8.8 to 17.6 ounces. 20% weighs 500 to 1,000 grams 1.1 to 2.2 pounds. 25% weighs 1,000 to 2,000 grams to 0.22 for 0.4 pounds. 18% weighs 2,000 to 4,000 grams for 0.4 to 8.8 pounds. And projected from this comparison, the mean prey size for wedge-tailed eagles is estimated at 1,750 grams 3.86 pounds. Similar, but just slightly ahead of the Evreux eagle and some 14% ahead of the golden eagle. Global mean prey size. 53 further studies estimated mean prey weight, showing the mean prey weight in the Canberra Australian Capital Territory region in 3 different studies was estimated to be 1,298 grams to 0.86 to pounds, to 131 grams for 0.698 pounds, and 2,890 grams, 6.37 pounds. Changing likely due to the shifting significances of leporids and larger macropods. 80 for 85-86. In a small study from Armidale, New South Wales, it was estimated that mean prey weight was 1,309 grams to 0.886 pounds. Introduced mammals. While the introduction of invasive species to Australia has been generally having a negative to devastating effect on native animals and ecosystems, the wedge-tailed eagle is one of a few native species to largely benefit from these introductions. 791. This is especially due to the introduction of the European rabbit, which were deliberately introduced repeatedly abortively in 1859 and then via a concerted effect from 1937 to 1950, largely so the wealthy could hunt them. 92. The wedge-tailed eagles quickly took to the rabbits as prey along with another introduced leopard, the European hare Lepus europaeus. 789. In almost every part of Australia, these eagles take rabbits in some numbers, and they usually constitute the bulk of the prey species in most, if not all, Australian food studies. 84-85. In some dietary studies, rabbits have accounted for up to 89.2% of the diet by number and 86% by biomass, as in Bacchus Marsh. However, they more typically range from 16% to 49% of the diet by number in various studies. 85. One Canberra study found that 98.5% of the rabbits taken were adults. 84. In the largest study near Canberra, over 5.5 years, 19.3% of the diet of wedge-tailed eagles was rabbits, 12.7% of prey biomass among 1421 prey items. So the eagles took a total of some 275 rabbits in the 11 to 17 studied territories of the area. 80 for a study estimated that mean weight of wild rabbits in Australia was 1 point for kilograms 3.1 pounds, lower than estimated in the past. However, other studies estimated the mean weights of rabbits taken by wedge-tailed eagles as variously from 1.5 to 2.2 kilograms 3.3 to 4.9 pounds, or usually over 1.65 kilograms 3.6 pounds. Infrequently reported to 2.47 kilograms 5.4 pounds. Size of the rabbits being perhaps limited the poorly suited soil and environs of the Australian wilderness, 85-93, 58-95. Meanwhile, the European hare is neither as widely established nor as prolifically taken as rabbits by wedge-tailed eagles, but are by no means neglected and a substantial meal. 80 for 85, with a mean body mass of per kilograms 8.8 pounds. Hares have been as much as nearly 10% of the local diet and up to 14% of prey biomass in studies 84, 85, 93. Rabbit hemorrhagic disease was deliberately introduced to control the population of rabbits subsequent to 1995, followed more effectively by introduction of myxoma virus to limit the damage rabbits have inflicted on native vegetation and resultingly have competed native mammals like wallabies out of parts of their range. 92-96 ultimately. The rabbit population may have more than halved and locally have been some 90% reduced. 892. As a matter of consensus, the wedge-tailed eagles do not appear to be adversely affected in major ways by the biological control of rabbits, since they can revert to primarily taking native prey species quite readily. 97. In the region of Broken Hill, White Cliffs, and Cunnamulla, rabbits have gone down from accounting for 56 to 69% of the diet to 16 to 31% of it. 58. Furthermore, wedge-tailed eagles have been known to successfully maintain population in the absence of any rabbits in a few areas. 798. Wedge-tailed eagles are disproportionately likely to be seen eating carrion of roadkills killed by cars. In the wild, they often capture live prey. The predation of wedge-tailed eagles on young farm animals has been the primary historic driver for the persecution of the species. 101. However, in no known study have domestic livestock been known to be primary prey. 7-8. The closest association with them was in northwestern Queensland, where lambs ovis aries made up 30.7% of prey in pellets and 17.1% in remains, accounting for 15 to 21% of the prey biomass, while juvenile pigs, sus scrofa domesticus, made up 7.3% of pellet remains and 22% of the biomass. 100. Although it can be highly difficult, attempts have been made at parsing out whether the eagles had indeed killed the lambs rather than just lifting or dismantling them after finding them dead, as this eagle quite readily comes to carrion. The findings were that of 29 diagnosable lamb deaths in northwest Queensland, only 30.5% were due to eagle attacks. 9-100. The wedge-tailed eagle is at times capable of taking very substantial livestock animals. Lambs taken have been estimated to weigh a mean of 3.5 kilograms, 7.7 pounds, or up to 15 kilograms, 33 pounds, while fully grown sheep weighing some 40 to 50 kilograms, 88 to 110 pounds, are infrequently vulnerable, presumably in large part to hunting pairs of eagles. 85, 86, 58, 100. In the largest study of the Canberra area, 80.5% of diagnosable sheep specimens were adults, but probably were by and large scavenged. 84. Meanwhile, young pigs included in the diet were estimated to weigh around 14 kilograms, 31 pounds, and sometimes feral piglets are included in the diet. 95-100. When attacking lambs, the wedge-tailed eagles are apparently capable of driving their talons into the skull of the victim, although more typically, they land along the back and grip the lamb along the spine until it weakens and collapses while flapping the wings for balance. 99-100. This species will also land between a ewe or female pig and their respective lambs or piglets in order to separate the latter for attack. 7 wedge-tailed eagles are also known to at times prey on another animal introduced for human hunting purposes, the red fox vulpes, which can form up to about 4% of an eagle's breeding diet and 5% of the biomass, weighing up to 9 kilograms 20 pounds. Additionally, feral cats, mainly juveniles, can be part of their prey. 100 to 104. Native mammals. Presumably, the primary native prey of wedge-tailed eagles is marsupials, particularly macropods, which is also in accord with studies involving places where rabbits have declined or never occurred. 798. 105. Many wallabies, kangaroos, and associated animals are included in the diet, with over 50 marsupials known to be in the species prey spectrum. When selecting marsupials, wedge-tailed eagles tend to ignore smaller species and focus on larger-sized ones. 7,980 for 85. However, they generally most often take alive the young, small and sickly of large macropod marsupials. 8528. Findings were that juvenile macropods were taken out of proportion to their numbers in the environment, unlike rabbits, which were taken roughly in proportion to their abundance. 55. In recent times, they have been known to eat marsupials, such as kangaroos killed by cars. There is little evidence that macropods delivered to nests are usually roadkills or from carrion, but the source of prey is difficult to determine because, to minimize disturbance, examinations are usually done after breeding is complete. As well, the attendance at carrion by wedge-tailed eagles is disproportionately done by juvenile eagles. In one study of roadkills in Australia, the species ranked around 4th in frequency and capacity for carcass breakdown of scavengers at roadkills, behind feral pigs, red foxes, and ravens. 59. 106. 107. With relative infrequency, other classes of mammals, beyond leopards and marsupials, may be taken opportunistically by wedge-tailed eagles. 7. At least 2 species each of flying foxes and wattled bats are included in the prey spectrum. Occasionally, an eagle may take a monotreme, including both the platypus and the short-beaked Echidna tachyoglossus aculeatus. 80 for 130. For several species of rat are readily taken, and even the house mouse Ms. musculus, likely the smallest mammalian prey known for wedge-tailed eagles at around 20 grams, 0.71 ounces in weight. 80 for 93. 100 to, although rare, a dingo canis familiaris may be taken by a wedge-tailed eagle at times, mostly pups, or carrion, but sometimes a pair of eagles can kill adults too. 8. 135. 136. Beyond sheep, pigs, and infrequently young goats, Capra hircus, other ungulate prey, entirely introduced by man into the Australasian region, is eaten exclusively as carrion, so far as is known, including cattle bos taurus, despite claims that eagles have killed young calves, which is possible. They have only ever been witnessed feeding on afterbirths and not harming calves. Javan russa timorensis in New Guinea, sambar deer russa unicolor in northern Victoria, and water buffalo Bubulus bubalis. In one instance, a young girl was apparently subject to a brief attack by a wedge-tailed eagle, in what was likely an attempted act of predation, near her rural home, but the attack was abandoned by the eagle. It has been noted that some different species of large eagles are thought to occasionally attack children as prey, though, among extant species, only the crowned eagle and martial eagle, both in Africa, are thought to have successfully carried out rare acts of predation on human children. Birds take a clearly secondary position to mammals when importance, and especially prey weight, are concerned. However, the wedge-tailed eagle shows some fondness for avian prey. 7-8. With more than 100 prey species included in the prey spectrum, birds are the most diverse class of prey taken by these eagles. Generally, the predation of birds seems to be highly opportunistic, and no one type of bird reliably dominates the eagle's diet. 7-102. However, certain species, probably due to their commonality in eagle territories, and perhaps vulnerability through their own behavior that seem to be taken most often. 784. These consist of Corvus species, especially little Corvus mallory and Australian ravens Corvus coronoides, weighing a mean between species of around 580 to 590 grams, 1.28 to 1.30 pounds when taken. 300 to 329 grams, 10.6 to 11.6 ounces. Australian magpies Gymnorhina tibicin, 800 to 820 grams, 1.76 to 1.81 pounds. Australian wood duck Cheninetta jubata, 310 to 335 grams, 10.9 to 11.8 ounces. Gala Eolophus rosicapilla. Larger cockatoos and smaller parakeets and parrots. 80 for 85, 86, 100 to 142, 143 excessive citations. On Kangaroo Island, Australian and little ravens together constituted 19% of the diet. 98. In Canberra, fairly prominent numbers of magpies, wood ducks, galas, and eastern Platycercus eximius and crimson rosellas Platycercus elegans are known to be taken, these collectively forming up to about 25% of the diet by number. 85. In the Perth region, birds were taken amply, especially the Australian raven at 12.6% of prey remains and for 0.7% of the biomass, with birds constituting just shy of 25% of the diet. 28. Elsewhere in Western Australia, a similar percentage of the diet is made up of by birds, mostly the same species, with some number of Australian ringnecks, Barnardius zonarius, and Bowden's black cocket, Uz Zanda bowdeni as well. 100 to 144, peculiarly. One study found that among a large sample of 1826 prey items in the Northern Territory, that the most often identified prey species was the tiny budgerigar Melopsittacus undulatus S at 29 grams, 1.0 ounces, one of the smallest avian prey species for this eagle. 30 for 59. In a single study from the Fleurieu Peninsula, birds were the majority of prey for wedge-tailed eagles at 60 to 0.5%, mostly Corvus followed by wood duck, gala, and magpies. 142 other assorted avian prey include several species of waterfowl, including several ducks as well as swans and geese, and a fairly strong frequency of attacks on large rails such as swampfins, moorhens, native hens, and coots. Additionally, wedge-tailed eagles may take Australian brush turkeys Alectura lafani and Malifaux, Lepoa ocellata, quail, pigeons and doves, frogmouths and owlet nightjars, cuckoos, but unquails, stilts, lapwings, plains wanderers Pedionomus torquatus, thick-knees, gulls, petrels, cormorants, herons, ibises and spoonbills, cranes, other birds of prey, kingfishers, honeyeaters, quail thrushes, whistlers, monarch flycatchers, mudnesters, artemids, true thrushes, grass warblers, starling. The smallest avian prey attributed to wedge-tailed eagles is the 10 grams, 0.35 ounces zebrafinch Tania pigia gutata. 100. Particularly large birds are sometimes taken of a few species. When it comes to the emu Dromaeus novae hollandia, Australia's tallest and second heaviest bird, wedge-tailed eagles normally attack the small young, but are capable of attacking adult emus more than 10 times their own weight. An unusually close feeding association with a very large bird is with the Australian bustard Artiotus australis in northwestern Queensland, where bustards were found to account for 13.4% of the pellet contents and 23% of prey biomass. That study calculated the mean weight of bustards taken as 8.97 kilograms, 19.8 pounds, indicating that the eagles were selectively predating the much larger male bustards, reptiles, and other prey when selecting reptiles as prey. Wedge-tailed eagles by far are most likely to pursue lizards. The range of lizards they may prey upon is highly diverse in size and nature, with somewhere between 20 and 30 species known in the prey spectrum. 7, 9, 157. The most preferred reptilian prey by far is bearded dragons. 7-9. Despite the small size of this prey relative to most mammalian prey, they can be key to survivorship in more arid vicinities such as Central and Western Australia, where there is less diverse prey to pie. CK from 955. In video-monitored prey deliveries at Fowler's Gap Arid Zone Research Station, central bearded dragons Pogona viticeps dominated the prey composition, making up 68.2% of 110 prey deliveries and the only known instance of reptiles forming the bulk of wedge-tailed eagle diet. 55. A different study from prey remains and pellets found the central bearded dragon to comprise 28.6% of the diet among 190 to prey items. 56. In south-central Queensland, the bearded dragon was the leading prey species by number, making up 26.9% of 729 prey items. 95. In northeastern New South Wales, the eastern bearded dragon, Pogona barbata, was the second most numerous prey species behind the rabbit, at 16.6% of the diet. 121. The bearded dragons, when taken by wedge-tailed eagles, have had an estimated body mass ranging from 80 to 320 grams to 0.8 to 11.3 ounces. 28-100. They also prey on jacky dragons. 151. Larger lizards are readily taken as well given the opportunity. Skinks are occasional supplemental prey. Common blue-tongued skink Telequa cincoids at around 500 grams 1.1 pounds can make up around 5% of the diet in northeast New South Wales, while the 200 for grams 7.2 ounces Centralian blue-tongued skink Telequa multifasciata was quite prominent in the diet in the Northern Territory. 59-121, 158. In Western Australia, 617 grams 1.360 pounds shingleback skink Telequa rugosa and somewhat smaller western blue-tongued skink Telequa occipitalis collectively comprised about 7.5% of the diet. 100 to 158. Much bigger lizards are sometimes taken, namely monitor lizards. Around 20% of the 231 prey items in a Western Australian study was found to be monitor lizards, mostly to 0.3 to kilograms 5.1 pounds, yellow-spotted monitors, Varanus panops, with some 821 grams 1.810 pounds, Tangoa. There's Varanus gouldi. 120-158, adult Rosenberg's monitors Varanus rosenbergi, weighing around 1.1 kilograms to 0.4 pounds, can be also taken. 159. Even lace monitors Varanus varius, which weighs 6.3 kilograms 14 pounds on average adults, can be a prey for this powerful eagle. 121, 160, 161. Contrarily, lizards down to the size of a 20 grams 0.71 ounces pygmy spiny-tailed skinky Gurnia depressa and a 38 grams 1.3 ounces thorny devil mollicoridis may be taken. Beyond lizards, wedge-tailed eagles seldom seem to hunt other types of reptiles. 157. They hunt a few species of snakes, mostly venomous species, because they are prevalent in Australia. Snakes known to be included in the diet, including tiger snakes, Notechis scutidus, eastern brown snake Pseudonaja textilis, ring brown snake Pseudonaja modesta, bandy vermicella annulata, yellow-faced whip snake Demantia somophis, red-bellied black snake Pseudicus porphyriacus, and brown tree snake Boiga irregularis. 80-100 to 157, 163, 164. Excessive citations. Eastern long-necked turtle Chelodina longicalis have been claimed as prey in one report, although any other confirmed cases of predation on turtles by this species are not known. 7-157. Notably, there are no reports of wedge-tailed eagles attacking pythons, despite several species being present in Australia, nor on crocodiles. Perhaps these are the only predators too formidable to be attacked, as both of these reptiles can attain extremely large sizes. 165-166. Predation on frogs or other amphibians is almost unheard of for wedge-tailed eagles. However, based on toxicity reports in eagles, they may consume invasive cane toads Rhinella marina from time to time. 167. Similarly rare in the species diet is fish. Although common carp cyprinus carpio and western blue groper Achorides gouldi have been documented as prey. 80 for 102. Occasionally, wedge-tailed eagles may even attack insects such as Saltoda morans cicadas and Heteronychus eritor beetles. 84. Truly exceptional is in the Northern Territory, where a large percentage of 1826 prey items was made up by insects, including unidentified Orthoptera, at about 10.8% of the diet, unidentified beetles at about 8.4%, as well as some numbers of ants. Why and how they capture a profusion of insects locally is not clear, and they may be often from the stomachs of other prey or even byproduct from the captures of other prey or from the bodies of carca. Cis 59. Interspecific predatory relationships among the largest and most powerful Australian raptor. Wedge-tailed eagles are dominant over other raptor species of the region. The wedge-tailed eagle occupies a fairly unique niche relative to other aquila. While primarily continental in distribution, it is distributed well apart from most related species, whereas most aquila are distributed in Eurasia or Africa and face considerable competition over Ursus, enabling certain specializations of most species in habitat or microhabitat, morphology and behaviors, and often life history, including nesting grounds and often foods. 1053, 168. The wedge-tailed eagle has the ability to exploit a more Catholic variation of both prey and habitat since it exists with relatively fewer competing species. 7-9. The most considerable potential competition comes in the two other eagles regularly distributed in Australia, the little eagle and white-bellied sea eagle. 84-85. The little eagle has a few ecological similarities to the wedge-tailed eagle. It is also something of a habitat generalist, although it is found somewhat scarcely in more arid vicinity, high elevation areas, and varied semi-open forest than the wedge-tailed eagle. 761-84. Like the wedge-tailed eagle, the little eagle has in recent decades become a somewhat specialized predator of European rabbits. 784. However, the size difference is extreme between the wedge-tailed and little eagles, with the earlier over 4 times heavier than the latter, and the little eagle, as expected, exploits a lower trophic level relative to its more powerful competitor. 784. As in other areas where booted eagles and sea eagles have abutting ranges, sometimes wedge-tailed eagles compete with white-bellied sea eagles. 85. One key difference from elsewhere where competition sometimes occurs, such as the golden eagle with the white-tailed eagle Haliaeetus albicilla in Eurasia and the bald eagle Haliaeetus leucocephalus in North America, both of which are slightly heavier than the golden, is that the white-bellied sea eagle is the slightly smaller species than the wedge-tailed eagle, potentially giving the latter a more pronounced competitive edge. 169. However, the white-bellied sea eagle clearly does not shy away from contentious border disputes with wedge-tailed eagles, and the two species can often be seen readily attacking each other, occasionally in talon grappling, and sometimes cartwheeling attacks on one another. 6185. However, the ecological effect of interspecific competition of the two species is not clear, although the wedge-tailed eagle is considered the dominant species of the two. They clearly do not take the presence of white-bellied sea eagles lightly, and some authors feel they may avoid nesting near Arthems 885-170. Clearly, there is ample partitioning between the wedge-tailed and white-bellied sea eagles, the latter adapted to mostly open wetlands and coasts, and, while also a dietary generalist, they tend to derive most of their diet from fish, water birds, and other wetland-dwelling prey, and they seldom compete directly for prey such as mammals with wedge-tailed eagles. 85-170. Most other diurnal raptors that reside in Australia are considerably smaller and seldom can be said to present great competition to the wedge-tailed eagles, although some, such as swamp harriers Circus approximans, black-breasted kites, and gray goshawks Accipiter novae hollandia, are relatively large for their taxon and powerful predators in their own rights. 7-9. In one instance, a square-tailed Kytlophoctinia asura was observed to engage in an apparent territorial fight with a wedge-tailed eagle, including talon grappling. 171. When it comes to carrion, wedge-tailed eagles tend to dominate other predators, especially most birds, with most kites, other assorted raptors, and some large passerini birds, mainly corvus species and butcherbirds, coming to dead animals, including roadkills. 172. However, heavier terrestrial meat-eaters can hold their own at times against wedge-tailed eagles, namely red foxes, dingoes, monitor lizards, and Tasmanian devils, despite all these species sometimes turning up as prey of these eagles as well. 7-8. Sometimes the wedge-tailed eagle will readily rob various other raptors of their prey, including little eagles, white-bellied sea eagles, and brown falcons Falco berigora. 778, 173, 174. Wedge-tailed eagles will opportunistically prey on other birds of prey. They share this aptitude with other large eagles in different parts of the world, such as golden eagles, although such acts are relatively infrequent. It is clear that the wedge-tailed eagle is considered a primary threat by many raptors based on witnessed attacks by eagles on them and the mobbing behavior of other raptors. 753, 175. Among the other birds of prey known to occasionally fall prey to these eagles are little eagles, collared sparrowhawks Accipiter cercephalus, gray goshawks, brown goshawks Accipiter fasciatus, Pacific bases Aviceta subcristata, black-breasted buzzards, peregrine falcons Falco peregrinus, Australian hobbies Falco longipennis, black falcons Falco subniger, brown falcons and Nanking kestrels Falco centroids. 7, 78, 80 for 100 to 121, 176, 177, 178. Occasionally owls are also included in the prey spectrum when an opportunity arises, including barn owls Tyto javanica, southern boobuks Ninox boobook, and even powerful owls Ninox strenua. 7, 28, 120, 179. Wedge-tailed eagles are apex predators and have no well-documented predators, although presumably they have some nest predators, likely including ravens and currawongs, especially when displaced by human disturbance from their nests. 8-9. Occasionally, these eagles may possibly risk injury or death in conflicts against other powerful predators and scavengers, such as dingoes, quolls, Tasmanian devils, gonas, and snakes. But no such verified instances seem to be known in literature, and man is considered to be the wedge-tailed eagle's only true threat. 7-8-9. Occasionally, they may be injured and even killed via intra- and interspecies territorial conflicts and mobbing by other birds of prey, especially stooping peregrine falcons, which have successfully knocked wedge-tailed eagles out of the sky, with a force known to kill both golden and bald eagles in other parts of the world. Due to the formidable aerial attack of the peregrine, it may be the only raptor, besides the white-bellied sea eagle, that wedge-tailed eagles may avoid nesting near. 8-9, 180. Most of the large falcons, including peregrine, brown and black falcons, and at times large owls, nest in unused or abandoned wedge-tailed eagle nests. 8-9. The breeding season is from July to December through much of range. In New Guinea, apparently from May on 4, they have a distinct tendency that lay earlier in the more northerly part of the range. For instance, in northeastern Australia, laying has been recorded in January and February, and in Tasmania in September. For 10. In Western Australia, Breeding depends on food, and during drought periods there may be no nesting for up to 4 years. 4. Adult wedge-tailed eagles are usually solitary or occur in pairs, but immatures are more gregarious. 10 to 15 young wedge-tailed eagles may rest or soar together or even hunt together, and up to 40 have been recorded at once at a carcass. For mated adults perform mutual soaring, undulating dives, and tandem flights with rolling and foot touching. 86, 181. The female may appear to ignore or more often turn over and present claws when a male is displaying. 10, as possibly part of courtship, feedings on pairs have taken place away from the nest, and sharing of a cache of food may occur. 8, 182. Allop breeding occurs occasionally between pairs but is seldom observed, although at times has been considered a regular part of the courtship process. 886. Contrary to historical accounts, wedge-tailed eagles seldom engage in an elaborate courtship display and will instead generally try to conserve energy, instead devoting their energy for the upcoming trying breeding season along with territorial exclusions of conspicuous and obtaining food. 183. Mating tends to occur on a bare branch or dead tree in the nest area and may continue into the nestling period. 86, 184. Contrary to old accounts, the species does not mate in flights. 8. In the pre-laying phase, mating was recorded to be preceded or accompanied by loud, slow yelping, but in the nestling period, the pair alighted together and the male mounted without preliminaries, and a silent copulation lasted for 1 minute. 786. Territories and home range territories are established with aerial displays, which can include high circling by one or both of pair, sometimes interspersed with flight rolls and talon presenting. For most of the time, wedge-tailed eagles typically respect pair boundaries and can limit territorial behavior to mild aerial flights, with the intruders usually giving the ground to incumbents. 8. Violence is usually avoided, but sometimes the most heated territorial disputes can escalate to deaths. 8. Sometimes the displaying eagle may engage in a steep dive on part-closed wings followed by an upward swoop. Later may escalate into spectacular sky dance with undulations. They may to loop-the-loop. For 10. Cartwheeling is typically rare, but in one case, 3 immatures mock dived at each other to birds interlocked and cartwheeled several times before breaking away. No cartwheeling or talon grappling has been reported between members of a mated pair, but occasionally reported as used against intruding eagles. For 181, aerial displays may go on for a while, normally early in the breeding season, between 3 months and 3 weeks prior to egg laying. 10 territorial attacks by male wedge-tailed eagles may be against any encountered intruding eagles, including both male and female intruders, while female eagles engage in less territorial attacks, and when they do, it is exclusively against other females. 185. Territorial aggression can extend towards hang gliders and aircraft, advances noisily, bill open and talons extended until flying just above and behind or slightly ahead of pilot, then swoops repeatedly after making contact with the hang glider. 4. A core of some 1 kilometer, 0.62 miles radius around the nest is most fervently defended. 86 foraging ranges from nest may be up to about 20 square kilometers, 7.7 square miles. 140 to foraging ranges on breeding home ranges may be around 50 square kilometers, 19 square miles for males, and 20 square kilometers, 7.7 square miles for females in arid central Western Australia. 120 range sizes of pair members vary greatly based on topography, habitat, and prey access. 8. Several reported densities of 3 to 6 pairs per 100 square kilometers, 39 square miles, others of 7 to 12 pairs per 100 square kilometers, 39 square miles. 4. When rabbits were in plague-type numbers, pairs may nest as close 700 meters to 1,300 feet apart, and for others no more than 2 kilometers, 1.2 miles from those to pairs. 4. In semi-arid areas of New South Wales, near Menindee densities were found to be about a pair per 53 square kilometers, 20 square miles, 10 to 12 pairs in good years, 3 in drought years. Not far from that in Mutawinchi National Park density was around a pair per 3 to 9 square kilometers, 1.2 to 3.5 square miles. 54. Much higher densities were noted in this semi-arid zone of western New South Wales, with a pair per 3 to 9 square kilometers, 1.2 to 3.5 square miles, against around a pair per 40 to 48 square kilometers, 15 to 19 square miles, in other arid zones. 54. In Western Australia, arid areas at a nearest neighbor distance of 5.3 to kilometers 3.31 miles, while those nesting in mesic areas had a distance of 4.88 kilometers 3.03 miles. 187. At Fowler's Gap, there were 9 to 10 pairs per 390 square kilometers, 150 square miles. 55. 56. Near Canberra, around 37 pairs were reported in an area of 1,000 square kilometers, 390 square miles, including some unusually as close as 130 meters for 130 feet to paved roads and as close as 200. This contrasts strongly with 36 years prior, when few nests were near human-altered areas and the amount of pairs in the same area was about 32. 188-160 in the Fleurieu Peninsula in South Australia during the early to mid-2000s. There was a pair per 53 square kilometers, 20 square miles. Active nest sites were 6.6 kilometers for 0.1 miles apart, while the average home range around the nest is 30 for square kilometers, 13 square miles roughly. Resurvey efforts a dozen years later in Fleurieu Peninsula found a more populous population, resulting in a home range estimated at 30 to 0.1 square kilometers, 12.4 square miles, with some active nests as close as 1.5 kilometers, 0.93, 1,001 apart. In the Perth area, it was projected that the mean home range was about 36 square kilometers, 14 square miles, 28. Meanwhile, in southern Victoria, the nearest neighbor distance of breeding pairs was for 0.7 kilometers to 0.9 miles, while mean territory size was calculated at 17.6 square kilometers, 6.8 square miles. 190. Nest in a leopardwood tree at Mutawinchi National Park. Both sexes may participate in building the nest, but the female takes the greater share, often standing in the middle and building outwards. 10. Often wedge-tailed eagles build alternative nest, up to 2 to 3 per territory, though when undisturbed uses the same general site repeatedly. 10. In Tasmania, territories held a mean of 1 point for nests. 8. The nest is usually either substantial or massive. The nest is a structure of sticks ranging 70 to 100 centimeters to 0.3 to 3.3 feet across and 30 to 80 centimeters, 12 to 31 in deep when first built, but with repeated additions up to 2.5 meters, 8.2 feet across, and nearly 4 meters, 13 feet deep for 6. The interior nest cup is commonly around 30 to 40 centimeters, 12 to 16 in across, about 10 centimeters, 3.9 in deep. 10. For studies found the diameter of nests to average from as little as 1.1 meters, 3.6 feet, and as much as 1.9 meters, 6.2 feet, and in depth from as little as 1 meter, 3.3 feet, to as much as 1.3 meters, generally speaking in woodland or forest edge areas. Nests tend to be larger, while those in sparser, more arid areas tend to have characteristically smaller nests, as they have lesser access to nest building materials. 55, 28, 56, 191 good-sized nests can weigh well over 400 kilograms, 880 pounds. 8. Nests are usually lined with green leaves and twigs, a common practice in accipitrids. 10. Infrequently, they may use an old nest built by another accipitrid, namely whistling kites, Haliaster sphenuris, and white-bellied sea eagles, with the earlier nests apparently added to in order to enlargen it. Pate. Ideally, the nest is located at 12 to 30 meters, 39 to 98 feet above the ground on a lateral branch or main fork of lone or forest tree. In taller trees, nests can be as much as 75 meters to 146 feet high to the opposite extreme, down in lower ground, or even on rocks or ground. In a few studies different areas of New South Wales, the mean nest height was from 5.2 to 21.7 meters, 17 to 71 feet, and were often relatively close to human development. 50 for 86, 55, 56, 57 excessive citations. To results in southern Victoria found mean nest heights to be 12.6 and 18.1 meters, 41 and 59 feet. 190 in often particularly arid Western Australia, mean nest heights were reportedly lower, averaging at 6.5 and 15.5 meters, 21 and 51 feet, 28, 120. Detailed study in Western Australia found nest heights were higher in Mediterranean scrubland at for 216 meters, 13 to 52 feet, against to 26 meters, 6.6 to 19.7 feet in the arid zone. But nest height seemed to not have bearing on occupancy or success. Territoriality kept the population regulated within the habitats. 192. Occasionally, they may nest in dwarf trees at as low as 1 to 2 meters, 3.3 to 6.6 feet. For 190 to favored nesting trees include many eucalyptus and casuarina species, as well as corymbia, calitris, and Syncarpia glomulifera, while in inland areas more often acacia, flindursia, as well as Hackia leucoptera and Grevillea striata. The amount of eucalyptus tree species used by wedge-tailed eagles is extremely diverse, and ultimately the species seem to have no strong overall preferences regarding tree species. More importantly, seeking a given tree of ample height and considerable broadness. 886. Furthermore, nest trees are often on slightly elevated ground above the mean ground level, presumably in order to offer a more commanding view of the surrounding environment. 986. Additionally, trees with fewer lower branches may be preferred. 8. Nests are seldom on dead trees. Usually this occurs where there is an absence of leafy ones. 7. While Australian nests can be in quite varied surroundings, Tasmanian nests are almost exclusively within well-forested areas. 8. Forest-type nests tend to have a sparse, open understory, and woodlands or nearby glades often are considered perhaps more attractive to the species. 986. In desert-type areas, they may nest on a hill or a rise, and in addition sometimes cliff ledges, or among rocks, and even on ground in both islands and desert-like areas, preferably in areas difficult for or inaccessible to humans. For 193. Additionally, they've been known to nest on power pylons and telegraph poles. 194. 195. Other smaller animals may nest among the sticks at the base of active wedge-tailed eagle nests, such as finches, pardalotes, and even possums, which more so than the small birds are presumably vulnerable to the eagles if caught in the open, perhaps gaining some protection from the presence of the eagles. 8. This is a not unknown phenomenon in many bird assemblages for small birds to gain incidental protection from strong raptors. 196. Other species, such as Pacific black ducks, Anis superciliosa, falcons, and owls, may also benefit by utilizing unused nests for their own breeding purposes, although typically only the falcons usually use them with relative regularity. 8. Development of young and parental behavior. Aquila audaxeg, MHNT. Clutch size is usually just 1 or 2, but sometimes to 4. For about 80% of nests where eagles have managed to lay eggs contain 2 eggs. 8. Mean clutch size is apparently somewhat higher in the western part of the range. 197. Female lays multi-egg clutches by some 3 days or so apart. 8. The eggs are buff or white in color, often appearing heavily blotched all over with purple-brown, red-brown, or lavender, or more sparsely spotted with reddish-brown. The amount of spotting is quite variable on eggs even within a single clutch, some being heavily marked, others hardly at all, and at times concentrated on the pointier end of the egg. When freshly laid, the eggs are glossy, but they become more matte and brittle with age. 8-10. Eggs may range in height from 66 to 79.3 millimeters to 0.60 to 3.12 in, averaging 73 millimeters to 0.9 in a sample of 54, by 55 to 63.5 millimeters to 0.17 to 0.50 in, averaging 58.8 millimeters to 0.31 in. 8-10, 197, 198. Each egg normally weighs about 120 to 150 grams for 0.2 to 5.3 ounces, the equivalent to about 3 chicken eggs, or about 3% of the female eagle's body weight. 10% when the clutch number is 3, which is typical for an aquila eagle, but a small percentage relative to smaller raptors. 8, 168, 197, 198. The larger eagles of Tasmania lay larger eggs on average reportedly. 6 wedge-tailed eagles sometimes lay runt eggs in nests in normal nests, in a condition apparently unique for Australian raptors, and these reportedly never hatch. 8-6. If a clutch is lost or stolen early in incubation, some pairs have been documented to replace it, being able to do so about a month later. 8. The incubation stage lasts for 42 to 48 days. 4. The female of the pair either primarily or entirely incubates on her own and, like many eagles, she is a tight-sitter. 8-10, 199. However, the male will incubate at times as well, at least up to an hour at a time. 7, 121. In New South Wales, the male was found to incubate for 16 to 20% of daylight, during which the nest was unguarded for 3 to 13% of the day. 55, 56. In some cases, male incubation may vary from 1 to 6% of daylight to as much as 38% of daylight, with shifts in extreme lasting up to 6 hours. 786. Male primarily delivers prey to the nest during incubation, not prior, up about to the stage where the eagles can be left unattended. 755. The chicks are covered in white down up at first and are expectedly semi-altricial. At about 12 days or so, a slightly grayer down develops, and this ultimately becomes a woolly undercoat for the contour feathers. Within a couple days later, the black quills of the primaries often start to emerge and can start to stand and move around the nest. At 28 days, the eagles are showing their upper wing coverts increasingly through the down. At 35 days of age, some darker feathers are appearing on areas such as the breast, belly, mantle, back, and head. Mostly these are evident as a few dark rufous feathers poking through the head down, while at this age they show a short buff-tipped tail. They are partially feathered up to 37 days and nearly completely feathered by 49 days. 8, 10, 9, 199. At around 37 days, they can attempt to tear food from carcass in the nests without much success. 10 from 50 days onwards, the eagle does play a good deal, pouncing on sticks and debris around the nest. Around this age, they are markedly almost full-feathered, but for the wing and tail, neither of which has reached its full length, and they may have a few wisps of down about their crown or neck. Weight increases are from about 1.17 kilograms to 0.6 pounds at 15 days, with a notably increase in robustness to 0.6 kilograms, 5.7 pounds at 29 days, to 3.2 kilograms, 7.1 pounds at 49 days, making more rapid feathering growth thereafter primarily, while body size growth slows considerably. In 8, 10, sibling aggression tends to begin at very early stage of life and decrease. Unlike related eagles, there is some evidence that higher parental attendance limits instances of aggression, whereas in other eagles, this occurs often in the parent's presence. In all eagles, the parent eagles do not attempt to intercede when runting or aggression between siblings occurs. 53-55 siblicide occurs occasionally in this species, and it is considered a facultative canist, rather than an obligate one, meaning siblicide occurs occasionally and as conditions dictate, as opposed to some eagles where it occurs almost invariably. 853-200 sufficient environmental conditions can largely reduce sibling aggression. 8. In New South Wales, 3 of 4 successful pairs raised to fledglings, and no sign of rivalry or pecking behaviors observed despite the size difference of 2 siblings. 87. The female broods attentively at first, but then decreases after the 2nd or 3rd week and then ceases brooding almost entirely by 30 days, even at night. For 40 or more days, the female continues to assist the young with feeding, typically from the male's prey deliveries, though the female may resume hunting after nest attendance drops. 10-201. Potential predators, such as gonas, are struck when found to be approaching the nest. Although the eagles usually abandon the nest, repeated intrusions and noisy disturbances may have a net negative effect, such as on Tasmanian wedge-tailed eagles, as these factors often lead to nest failure. 8. In one case in South Australia, the removal of a dead tree in the vicinity of a wedge-tailed eagle nest resulted in full abandonment of the nest by the parents. 181. The female may continue to bring green leaves to a late stages, doing so more often in a spell of wet weather. 10. During times of plenty, caches can sometimes form around the nest, with much prey left partially or entirely uneaten. 8. Upon leaving the nest at 11 to 12 weeks of age, the young eagles are not strong flyers for another 20 days or so, but concomitant flying can be by about 90 days of ages, though full feather development is not until 120 days. 8-10 fledgling occurs at 67 to 95 days, typically being less than 90 days and averaging roughly around 79 days. For 10-55-56 121 excessive citations, dependence lasts up to for 6 months after fledging, with the juvenile eagles, which overstay, rarely known to be an occasionally fatal danger to the subsequent chick. During the later periods of fledgling, interactions are restricted to brief prey deliveries, and the parent eagles stop feeding the young eagless, forcing to go forage elsewhere for foods. 10. A study of post-fledgling dispersal found in one case that a young eagle covered only a 4.22 square kilometers, 1.63 square miles range, with a maximum covered in a week of 3.8 kilometers to 0.04 miles. 200 to most recoveries in one banding study were distributed under 300 kilometers, 190 miles from their original banding site, mostly as fledgling-aged juveniles, but some meandered up to 821 kilometers, 510 miles away. After dispersal, young eagles are floaters up until their 4th or 5th year, typically avoiding the territories of adults and searching out feeding opportunities. Up to 2/3 of young wedge-tailed eagles may die sometime between fledgling and when they are 3 to 5 years, but adults often have quite low mortality rates and can live the better part of a half-century. 8. First breeding is typically at 6 or 7 years old. 190 to lifespans of wedge-tailed eagles in the wild are poorly known, with the maximum recorded in one banding study being merely breeding success. Only one young is typically produced from a clutch of 2, but occasionally two fledglings may occur. The breeding success rates of the species are variable. 6. In overall studies, at least 52 to 90% of breeding pairs manage to produce a fledgling, with further projected numbers from this of 0.2 to 0.5 fledgling per pair, 0.7 to 1.2 fledgling per clutch, and 1.1 to 1.3 fledgling per brood. 8. In southwestern Australia, from 0.7 to 1.2 young are fledged per clutch laid, 0.19 to 0.46 young per pair per year. 6. In south-central Queensland, Fledgling productivity was 1.1 per young to pairs that laid eggs. 95 northern New South Wales eagles were able to produce 0.8 young per pair from 2005 to 2006, while 0.89, 0.6 for fledged young per pair per year was the fledgling rate in central and western New South Wales, respectively, 86, 55 to 103. In a further study in New South Wales at Burndong Dam, from 1993 to 2003, 15 pairs produced an average of 1 fledgling per territory, but 1998, due to drought conditions, the rate was only 0 for chick per territory. Within Kinchigan National Park, however, the rate of 0.99 young per pair was fairly consistent regardless of climatic conditions. 8. In the Australian Capital Territory, pairs were said to produce 1.1 fledglings per pair. 188 in southeastern Australia, from 0.9 to 1.5 young per clutch are laid, with 0.6 to 1.0 young per pair per year. In Tasmania, from 0.6 to 0.8 young are fledged per clutch laid, 1.07 per successful nest. 0.91 young were produced per pair in southern South Australia, or 1.1 fledglings per successful nesting attempt. 140 to subsequent research in South Australia found 38 successfully fledged young with 10 pairs or 26% producing to fledglings, and that production was 1.1 per occupied territory and 1.3 per successful pair. 200 for 0.73 fledglings were produced pair per year in southwest Western Australia. 28 Western Australian eagles produced 0.9 to fledged young per clutch laid and 1.1 young per successful nest. 205. During periods of drought in Western Australia, some wedge-tailed eagles may forego breeding for up to 4 years. 206. Higher annual rainfall in Western Australia, higher in mesic than arid areas, made a big difference in pair productivity, with 12% of arid zone pairs producing young, or 0.13 fledglings per pair, a very low productivity. While the mesic zone, 69% of pairs produced fledglings. Conservation status: a wedge-tailed eagle at Lake Burrumbeet, Victoria. A wedge-tailed eagle killed during times of heavy persecution, Queensland, c. 1910. In the 1990s, it was estimated broadly that the global population was somewhere between 10,001 and 1 million individuals, for 15 as of 2009. BirdLife International listed the total population as only 100,000 mature individuals, possibly conservative and from admittedly poor supporting data, 115 to 107. As of that analysis, BirdLife considers the overall population of wedge-tailed eagles to be possibly increasing. Generally, the wedge-tailed eagle appears to be quite stable in population, 15 to 108. Although wedge-tailed eagles are often scarcer than those large distribution suggests, their total distribution covers more than 10.5 million square kilometers, and the population is quite likely within hundreds of thousands. 1 for thinning of forest cover, mostly inadvertent provisioning of carrion food sources, and, particularly, rapid introductions may have aided the species, and it may actually be commoner now than before European colonization. For 6, though protected, sometimes wedge-tailed eagles are shot or trapped or killed by poison carcasses set out by farmers, many of whom consider it a serious sheep killer. 4. Historically, the wedge-tailed eagle was subject to persecution levels to rival any other eagle in the world. 10 to 109-12. The heavy persecution began in the closing decades of the 19th century, due largely to the establishment of large-scale sheep farming in Australia. One Queensland station claimed to have poisoned 1060 eagles over 8 months in 1903. 8 laws passed from 1909 to 1925 made it mandatory for landowners and farmers to kill eagles as vermin, with enforcement determined by a given region's minister or vermin board, resulting in even more sweeping efforts to destroy the species. 12,210 steel-jawed rabbit traps were set around carcasses, and heligoland traps could sometimes trap several eagles at once, beyond sustained shooting and poisoning efforts. 8. Between the years 1958 and 1967, 120,000 bounties were paid in merely the states of Queensland and Western Australia on wedge-tailed eagles killed, meaning an average 13,000 were killed each year. 8. 12,210, even by 1967 to 1976. Likely intentional human killings accounted for 50% of wedge-tailed eagle mortalities in Western Australia, with an estimated 30,000 killed in the year of 1969 throughout Australia. 8. Strong legal protection started in Western Australia in the 1950s, increasingly so to the 1970s or later elsewhere. Now it is protected and subject to limited persecution throughout. 12. Despite reduced persecution, as of the 1980s, 54% of recovered eagles by the 1980s were killed by human persecution. 211. Despite such stunningly high rates of persecution, the wedge-tailed eagle was remarkably resilient to the haphazard persecution inflicted by humans in a way many other Australian wildlife, especially the regionally endemic mammals, and even other eagles elsewhere often are not. 25. 212. 213. Often the species is less intentionally harmed via human disturbance via land development, particularly intensifying agricultural and modern settlements, which can in turn lead to clearing of mature trees, disturbances at the nest and decline of native prey species, all of which have a net negative effect on the wedge-tailed eagles. 7.6. 214. Eggshell thickness was not significantly decreased by the use of DDT, likely to the largely mammal-based diet of the species, whereas raptors which consume birds or fish are disproportionately affected by DDT. 6. 215. On occasion, the species is still subject to illegal shootings and poisonings. However, persecution of this species is significantly less prevalent in recent decades. 8. 667. Occasionally, but not commonly, they are killed by sodium fluoroacetate poisons long used to control Australian wildlife, but now generally directed at invasive species such as rabbits, feral pigs, and foxes. 8.9. A list of the main persistent threats in the 21st century to wedge-tailed eagles consists of destruction of habitat, including logging, developments including urbanization, wind farm collisions, and the disturbance and destruction associated with their construction, increasing density rural human populations, illegal persecution in sheep farm areas, drowning in open tanks in dry pastoral zones, roadkills, especially while foraging for roadkill carrion, collisions with fences, power lines, and airplanes, regular electrocutions, poisoning from rabbit baits and other baits, and exposure to lead and other bullet fragments, which may be responsible for some eagle debilitatio, NS, and deaths. 7. 216, 217, 218, 219 excessive citations. Within the Fleurieu Peninsula, some 1.7 for eagles on average are claimed by wind farm turbine collisions. 140 to conservation needs may differ in different habitats, i.e., in more coastal temperate areas, the eagle is reported to have difficulty nesting when hillsides have been cleared of trees. Meanwhile, inland, they have lesser need of trees in elevated locations because they are more often assisted by thermals. However, they cannot generally persist where leafy trees are clear-cut. 8. 220. Surprising resilience even to drought was found recently in the wedge-tailed eagles in the Australian Capital Territory, where pair occupancy remained consistent through drought for wedge-tailed eagles, but not for little eagles. But this may have more to do with the wedge-tail's more successful uncoupling from a dependence on declining rabbits as prey than the little eagle. 221 of 84 eagle deaths or debilitating injuries, 52% were attributable to collisions or electrocutions, 15.5% due to persecution, 11% due to natural causes, and 15% were due to unknown causes. Status in Tasmania: threatened Tasmanian wedge-tailed eagle seen in silhouette alongside a forest raven. The Tasmanian race of wedge-tailed eagle, flea, is quite restricted in range and habitat, with estimated numbers having gone from 140 pairs in the 1980s down to only 60 to 80 by the mid-1990s. For 222, with the island's population numbering quite low and likely continuing its declining, as evidenced by slow replacement of lost pair members. The subspecies is listed as state endangered, 223, 224. Furthermore, surveys contrasting 1977 to 1981 with 1998 to 2001 data found a decline of around 28% in the island's reported number of eagles. 7 generally Tasmanian wedge-tailed eagles are even less tolerant of human alterations and disturbances near the nest site than mainland wedge-tailed eagles, and have more specific habitat requirements. For 6, historically, the same hunting organization in Tasmania that played a large role in the extinction of the thylacine Thylacinus cynocephalus also intentionally tried to hunt the Tasmanian wedge-tailed eagle into extinction, publicly having erroneously claimed that eagles were non-native in Tasmania. However, hunting is unlikely to further continue on a large scale in the state. 8, where habitat clearance and degradation is extensive in Tasmania, the native prey populations are insufficient to support eagles. Furthermore, the clearing or logging of trees is especially critical in Tasmania, where the eagle is by and large a forest-dependent breeder. 191, 225 studies indicate that Tasmanian eagles mostly nest in emergent trees in old growth, native forest exposed to early morning sun and sheltered from prevailing strong winds and cold spring winds, given the more temperate climate there relative to most points in mainland Australia. 191, 226. The subspecies requires forest areas greater than 10 hectares 25 acres in which to breed and is very prone to desert its nest when disturbed. 191. A predicted change was calculated to the carrying capacity of the Tasmanian forest given current operations is mottled, likely driving the population down. 11 wind farms in Tasmania are also an occasional threat, although not thought to be a significant source of mortality. Wedge-tailed eagles, especially young ones, are less success at avoiding invariably fatal collisions with them than Tasmanian white-bellied. See eagles, 227, 228. Furthermore, of 109 eagle carcasses recovered in Tasmania, all of them had trace levels of lead in their livers or femurs, with at least part of the exposure likely from lead ammunition. 229. In addition, like all eagles, Tasmanian wedge-tailed eagles are vulnerable to electrocutions and collisions with vehicles, overhead wires, and fences, and poisonings, largely via illegal killings by poachers of Tasmanian devils and forest ravens corvus. Tasmanicus, 15191, 230. Efforts are underway to ameliorate the harm being done to Tasmanian wedge-tailed eagles, especially via forestry operations. 230 in protected areas. Protocols are in place to protect Tasmanian eagle nests and protect them by creating an obligatory nest reserve of at least 10 hectares, and forestry operation have been restricted during the breeding season to outside a buffer zone of 500 meters 1,600 feet, extending further to 1 kilometer 0.62 miles if the proposed work is in the line of sight of the nesting. Eagles, 230, 231, about 20% of known pairs are outside protected areas and on private land, so are largely outside the strict legal protection the subspecies has on governmental forest land. Furthermore, researchers are instituting rules to minimize disturbance, limiting breeding surveys to distant observations of whitewash and flattened treetops as proof of nesting, and all detailed observe. To be obtained, iconographied bird is an emblem of the Northern Territory. The Parks and Wildlife Service of the Northern Territory uses the wedge-tailed eagle, superimposed over a map of the Northern Territory, as their emblem. The New South Wales Police Force emblem contains a wedge-tailed eagle in flight, as does the Northern Territory Correctional Services. La Trobe University in Melbourne also uses the wedge-tailed eagle in its corporate logo and coat of arms. 232. The wedge-tailed eagle is also a symbol of the Australian Defence Force, featuring prominently on the ADF flag, and the Royal Australian Air Force and Australian Air Force cadets both use a wedge-tailed eagle on their badges. 2. The Royal Australian Air Force has named its airborne early warning and control aircraft after the bird, the Boeing E-7 Wedge-tail. Early in 1967, the Australian Army 2nd Cavalry Regiment received its new badge, a wedge-tailed eagle swooping, carrying a lance bearing the motto "Courage" in its talons. The regiment's mascot is a wedge-tailed eagle named Courage. Since its formation, there have been two, Courage I and Courage II. In 1997, while on flight training with his handlers, Corporal Courage refused to cooperate and flew away, not being found for 2 days following an extensive search. He was charged with being AWOL and reduced to the rank of trooper. He was promoted back to corporal in 1998. The West Coast Eagles, an AFL football club from Western Australia, uses a stylized wedge-tailed eagle as their club emblem. In recent years, they have had a real-life wedge-tailed eagle named Aussie perform tricks before matches. Thanks for watching.